It's always interesting when streamers make big mistakes because they can't be undone. It's not like a YouTuber making a mistake and simply editing it out before uploading. No, when a streamer does it, not only does the live chat see it, they can record and share it with people who might have missed it. That's why streamer fail videos are so popular. It's the psychology of laughing at someone falling. Schadenfreude. And trust me, there's more than enough of that to go around today. But this tale is not unlike the others. At its core, this is a group collapsing because of a troll. But first, please let's thank today's sponsor for getting me out of my 2-week stay in my bed, wallowing in my inability to make a video. Crab of the water, I come seeking dice.
You were wise to seek me out, for I am the Crab of Awakened Realms. These adventurous dice add exciting twists to your D&D games. Choose wisely. These dice are only for the strongest beings. Check out the emotions die and let the crabby mood swings take over. Or try the critter dice like the Koi Lucky Die for extraordinary results. Our Awakened Realms games dice are for those seeking a challenge. Try the Intruder die and make your games more dangerous. And for those who love the classics, our quality RPG dice come in intricate designs and vibrant colors. Even crabs would be claw-struck. Unfortunately, if you're looking for boring, uncharacteristic dice, you've come to the wrong place. The link in the description is simply too powerful. But go there and all of your dice-filled dreams will come true. See you there.
I was looking for games in a new version of a famous national system, and there was a guy looking for players. He has a somewhat successful channel on Twitch and already had 2 campaigns going on in there. He wanted to add a third with new players. I applied and was accepted. In total, there were 7 players in the game, but only one needs introduction, and that's the Paladin. The Paladin here is also a streamer and an actual friend of the Dungeon Master. The problem player here, Paladin, of the god of honor, self-righteous, and he was extremely violent. His one way of interacting with anyone or anything was through violence, including the party. He never arrived less than 1 hour late to a session, and it got worse each session. Out of character, he would make some veiled threats against players before the session started, especially because we refused to share his posts about him. Okay, so timeout, I can't share the posts here exactly or I'm super banned, but think about the bannable things you can say about COVID, vaccines, Jewish and black people, and you're basically there. If I repeat the phrases listed, then I'm as good as banned, so I'm gonna go back to the story now. Things began at session 0 when Paladin showed up an hour and a half late. He claimed to be at work, but said he could arrive on time if sessions started an hour later than originally intended. This annoyed Judge a lot as his own schedule would have a hole in it because of this. Nevertheless, Paladin never showed up on time in any of the 4 sessions of the actual game we had. As the system was pretty new, nobody was very used to it. So many times we would have doubts and solve them mid-session. The DM would usually ask one of the players to find the solution in the book. The DM accepted me in the game in the first place because I had a pretty good understanding of the rules. Session 1. We all started in a roadside inn during a storm while traveling to a city famous for being the starting point for many adventurers, forcing us to go there and stay inside. In there, the owner's daughter played a song and introduced her family to the guests, the group, and asked us to introduce ourselves one by one, effectively introducing the characters. I thought it was a cool way to do it, as this was on stream with open cameras. A few of us got a little shy, including me. During the night, our bard saw something weird through the window, as an undead she doesn't sleep, and by the dawn the owner's daughter had gone missing. There was blood and a red piece of cloth. The judge, knight, and paladin were quick to get on their armor and promised to find her daughter as their deity's order demanded heroics from them. Rogue and bard didn't really care, and my cleric was shyly sitting next to her mother, unsure of what to say to her, but he didn't want her to be alone. Judge and Knight called the other guests and we all went after the girl, finding a trail that led us to a hill with cultists who offered her as a sacrifice to some profane deity. She was bleeding, and even though we got to her as fast as we could, she was already dead. One of the cultists was grappled, tied up, and interrogated by Candy, who showed him her real skeleton face to get information from him. Their cult was looking for virgins to sacrifice and had a camp nearby where they would perform their next sacrifice. Paladin wanted to torture the prisoner to death, and everyone was like, "What the hell?" and told him off, bringing him to the inn. I can't claim to know the system, but given the word Paladin was used, I'm going to impose the idea of a moral and righteous knight on him, fueled by a god that represents more than himself. I see this pointing to a big and perhaps the most common problem, and that is the player not fitting into the group. Because under normal circumstances, a paladin would see torture to the point of death as a moral atrocity and incompatible with their worldview. His insistence on such torture can only mean one of two things. Either his paladin beliefs encourage this behavior, which as I'm sure you also doubt, or he does not share the player's idea of roleplay, seeing Paladin more as a list of stats that he prefers to battle with. So far, I think the latter is true. He doesn't really feel the moral implications of playing Paladin, he just likes the idea of casting and fighting, but we will see how this opinion ages over the course of the story. Session 2. Trying to prevent things from escalating between Paladin and everybody else, the DM made the dead girl's mother execute the prisoner in front of us the moment she told what happened. This is similar to what had happened in the main campaign, leading to its end as the players no longer trusted the one who killed a child prisoner and refused to play with him. This was his way of saying that the paladin could get away with his violent tendencies. We followed the directions the prisoners told Candy the previous session and found a man looking for his missing girlfriend, who was still a virgin, the next possible sacrifice. We found the enemy camp, fought like hell. My cleric's ability to summon goblins to aid during the fight was pretty important, and while we were still tending to the wounded girl, who survived, Candy said that as the cult was targeting virgins, the best way to be safe was to have sex as soon as possible. Her boyfriend was smiling from ear to ear with this idea. Paladin was cutting limbs from the dead cultists, quote, because his thirst for justice and honor demanded it. Everyone was pretty fed up with him by now. He also started asking the DM about PvP and how my deity was seen in general, if heroes would follow him if they ever saw a follower of my deity, and the goblins around. Not very subtle. The knight found a church rosary which he handed to me to examine as he thought it was a religious thing. The idea of the paladin cutting limbs from already dead cultists and in his words justifying it as justice and honor demands it is both horrifying and completely realistic. What's funny is, in an attempt to play a hero, Paladin accidentally created a very well-written villain, someone who uses common moral truths to cover his extremely evil actions. Take defiling corpses or torture to the point of death, two of the few crimes where there is never a good or morally justifiable reason, no matter who you're dealing with. You cannot do these things while maintaining the moral high ground. The villain then responds, well, I simply care about justice, don't you? Why do you act in opposition to justice? Why are you defending the fallen enemy's honor? Are you an enemy? This type of villain exists in real life today and has existed throughout all of history and fiction. The writers and D&D players who might be writing their next campaign can learn from this and use it to create a realistic, terrifying villain. All of this came from the few words of a brutal sadist playing hero. Session 3. We reached the village where the couple had come down, where we were received as heroes once they told the elder what we had done for them, with a banquet where Knight gave my cleric the first drink of his life, instantly drunk, but not before I saw Candy's skeleton face. She used an illusion to look like an elven maid, just like she was before dying, which made my drunken cleric proclaim that he liked her more when she didn't have any skin. Huh. But everyone thought it was the drink talking, even himself believed it the next day. As we continued our trip to that famous city, we saw an old man in the middle of the road wearing a red robe, smoking from a pipe while sitting on a rock. He greeted us and offered us a smoke. Paladin instantly rolled an attack on the man, screaming that anyone who wears red is a terrorist, just like in real life. At the mic, there were 3 players wearing red at that exact moment, and almost all of them were left-wing. We urged the man, a tobacco merchant, to leave while we held down the crazed paladin. We reached a stone bridge where some kobolds demanded a toll for passing. While Knight was asking how much it costs, he was cut mid-sentence by Paladin, who screamed, "A good criminal is a dead criminal," and charged at the kobold closest to him. Candy actually spoke out loud, "Is this idiot going to attack everyone we meet?" The fight went on, and we pushed one kobold from the bridge. It was a big fall. My cleric and knight took the brunt of the damage, but we won. When it ended, an ogre woke up and started looking for the kobolds who had promised him food. Session ended, but everyone was very angry at Paladin. Session 4 and the final session. Paladin ran straight towards the ogre while making racist remarks towards people who were born where half of our players come from in real life. The ogre attacked Knight, who was the main tank we had, and knocked him down, but was pulled back towards Judge. Paladin hit the ogre, who hit him back with a critical hit and such a high damage that he was 2 HP away from instantly dying. In this system, there are no death saving throws. You make a DC 15 con check. If you pass, you're stable. If you fail, you bleed and lose 1d6 HP. We had 2 clerics in the group. He would surely survive. After a few players made their moves, it was down to me, Judge, and Paladin. I looked at Judge and thought, nah, Judge will heal him. I need to make sure that this ogre stops attacking us, and I used a spell that made him run away from us for a few turns, berating him like a parent berates a child, as making sure some races, including ogres, become part of his faith, and only using violence against them as a last resort. This way, he was out of peril, but also would not attack us anymore, basically making sure we could lick our wounds safely. Paladin swore that once his character was up, he would murder mine. Now that the threat would run from us, it was Judge's turn. Adjacent to Paladin, he moved closer to Knight and healed him, leaving Paladin to make his con check, which he failed, bled for 4 damage, and died in front of us. Most of the players were grinning. A couple, including me, might have danced a little bit at his death. We looted the kobolds and kept going, my cleric carrying the dead Paladin's body. Paladin left the call. We reached the famous city and found a graveyard where Candy put on a show as she haggled with the gravedigger for a discount in burying the Paladin. Meanwhile, Rogue was looting Paladin's corpse but was stopped by Judge, who demanded that he return everything so he can be buried with his possessions, including his holy symbol, saying that only savages would take that from a fallen traveling companion. He said that while looking at my cleric, who was friends with goblins, orcs, and bugbears because of his deity. This created a minor discussion between the 2 clerics while both players were creating a game show in the chat about clerics trying to see which deity would win a drinking contest. It was all in good fun, I promise. We never had a session 5 because Paladin left but not before posting in the group chat about how annoying it was to play with two rules lawyers. He was pointing fingers at me and Charles. And, quote, idiots who don't know that TTRPGs are all about killing monsters, getting rich, and thankful girls to have sex with. Plus, DM's computer had a troublesome issue with his new hardware, leaving him without a computer for a couple months. Afterwards, he decided to drop all of his campaigns and start anew. Last I checked, the DM had started a new campaign with 5 players from his 3 campaigns that were cut short, including Paladin, the only person he kept from our game. But it ended before session 10 because everyone else refused to play with Paladin, and one of them, a black man, actually sued him for racism. Me? I became a friend of Candy and played with her for a while in another campaign before she had to leave because of her work schedule. Charles and I became close friends, and we found out that we live in the same city, and I've had a few classes with his wife in college some years ago. We still play every week in a different campaign with some other people. P.S. In case you're wondering why we never went to the DM to address our issues with Paladin, 4 of us did, but he ignored it all because, quote, this is TTRPG, not real life. Politics and racism do not matter. Maybe not being in his campaign was a blessing after all. And I have to agree. Paladin is completely insufferable. I don't know how bad you have to be to get sued for racism, but my guess is it's more than a little bit. But aside from all the reasons that make him a bad person, there's a very clear reason he did not mesh with the group, and that is this passage right here. Quote, idiots who don't know that TTRPGs are about killing monsters, getting rich, and thankful girls to have sex with. It confirms my earlier suspicion that he did not really care about the roleplay of Paladin and saw it more as a power fantasy sort of thing. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to bed and not upload for another couple weeks. Till next time.